Okay, welcome to our tutorial. In the previous video, I showed you how you can create an SQLite open helper. You can use an SQLite open helper to create a database connection, which is easier for us to use over and over again. I also showed you how to implement the methods that are required and also how to create an add user method. Now, what we're going to do now is with this add users method, we're going to now test it. So to do that, we're going to go back to our register page. And in our register page, what we're going to do now is when the user clicks on the button .register.reg, we want to set an action. So action on click listener, new view on click listener. So this one, our previous one just navigated to a different page, but this one we're going to make it check some few things before it inserts the database. So before we do that, we have to do some validations, because first we want to do is want to get whatever the user has entered inside our form fields, and then want to check to make sure that it's not empty. If it's not empty, then we want to send it to the database. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get whatever the user has entered, or we want to check if the box is empty. So to do that, I'm going to create strings, because obviously whatever the user is going to enter is going to be of a type of a string. So string str equals, let's say str full name, for example, equals edt full name reg dot. There is a method that helps us to be able to get whatever text is inside our text box, and it's called get text. And then we're going to convert whatever we're getting into a string. I'm going to repeat the same step for the rest of them. So if you want to, you can just copy them and just change them accordingly. I think we're going to need 6. So I'm just going to do this str email address, and then edt email address. Again, I'm going to do edt, let's say password, and just say password here. And then next one, I believe it is, let's try phone number. Let's try a bio. Let's try DOB. And then let's just change accordingly. So EDT phone number, EDT bio, EDT date of birth. Okay, beautiful. So we now have all our form fields that we require from the user. So what we want to do is we want to set some if and else statements, just to make sure that the user does not enter anything into our database that is empty, because if a user doesn't enter anything, it will actually insert into the database. And what we actually end up with is a user with no username and password. And that is very risky for your application, because if any person just clicks on sign in, it will go inside your database and will look for a column or a row where there's no username and password, and the user will have access to it. So that's something to cater for whenever you're creating your application, to make sure that, remember, if you submit an empty form field into a database, it's a hack for people to get access to your application. So I'm going to do an if statement. So if str full name dot is empty helps us to, it just checks that the string that's returned is it empty. We're going to repeat the same step for the rest of them. So full name, we do again the same thing, and just means that he has to be positive, he has to be positive. They all have to be the same. If it's negative, 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 he has to be positive. So and is just and. Just think of and as times. When you times 0 by 1, it's always going to be a 0. So it has to be exactly the same thing, if that makes sense. So again, str phone number and str password and str date of birth dot is empty. I don't think I added it. It's empty on this one. I'm just adding that it's empty here. And again, the same thing for here is empty. I believe we've got a last one, which is bio, str bio dot is empty. And then we have our if and else statement. So if our or the fields, any of the fields. So what this does is it just checks any of the fields. If any of the fields is empty, this code will not run. You can fill the full name, the email address, the phone number, the password, but if the date of birth is empty, it fails, right? So if it's empty, what we want to do is we want to display a message to the user. This is where our txt display info thing comes in. So we just do txt display info reg, and then we're going to do dot. Again, we can set a text, so we can change whatever to appear on that label. We can say all fields required. Okay, so now let's go to our emulator. Let me run the emulator, and let's see if what we've just written works.